What do you mean by that? Hey, this is Jared.
And I'm Genna, and this is...
What do you mean by that? And it's a podcast by two performers that just happen to be married.
No way.
Yes way. And we wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what we've been up to last week at...
UPTAs, the Unified Professional Theater auditions. We attended last weekend in Memphis, Tennessee, and we just wanted to share a little bit about our experience with you guys.
Yes, just a little rundown of those of you who do not know what UPTAs is. It is a theater conference that happens every year. It's hosted at Playhouse on the Square by Courtney Oliver, is her name, and basically you just go in, you do a 90-second package, you get a certain number once you audition, you pass pre-screening, and then you go on to professional auditions. For college students out there, it's called pre-professional, just because you're not out in the world yet, and that is how you attend.
Yeah, so you have to be at least a college senior to do the pre-screenings, but then college senior through professional performer after graduation, you're more than welcome to get through the pre-screenings and then move on to the in-person auditions, or you can actually do it virtually as well once you get passed through. Yep,
and we've actually done both now. We've done virtual and in-person, so it's nice to have a little bit of viewpoint from either side of that.
Yeah, either way, it's such a good opportunity to be seen by a lot of different theaters, theme parks, cruise lines. There are even some talent agencies there, just a lot of opportunities represented that you're able to be seen for.
Yeah, absolutely. And see, you went before I did, so how was that?
Yeah, so I actually wound up, I went on the second or third day of auditions. They do it over a whole weekend. I think it's like Friday through Sunday, Friday through Monday.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I went on Sunday, but I was in the first group of the day, which was a little bit nerve-wracking when I figured that out. But so basically the process for me, I got there on Sunday morning. They host a welcome meeting that they encourage you to attend if you've never done it before. And since I'd only ever done virtual UPTAs, I decided to go to the welcome meeting that morning. And it was very helpful. So if you are going to UPTAs in the future or plan to, I would highly encourage going to the welcome meeting just to get some pretty necessary info. They walk through exactly how the audition is going to go, where you stand, what you tell the pianist, where you exit the stage, all things that, as me personally, as I'm getting ready for audition and lying awake the night before, I'm like, oh no, where do I walk and how will I know where to go and where do I sit and where do I stand? So they answer all those questions for you and just basically walk you through how the day's going to go.
Yeah, it was really nice. Throughout the entire weekend, everyone made sure that you felt as comfortable as possible. And that's not something you get at all auditions. No hate to anyone, but everyone who has auditioned before knows that there's sometimes a question mark in your head of what exactly you do, or if there's an on deck chair, or if there isn't, or how exactly everything works. They make sure to go through step by step so that you don't have to worry about anything but just performing your best.
Yeah, and I had heard before that UPTAs was just a really good experience and that everyone there working UPTAs was just very, very nice. And I never knew if that was actually true or if it's just oh, they just say that because, that's right. The thing to say. Right. But it actually was true. All the volunteers, all the coordinators, all the choreographers, just everyone I encountered at UPTAs was genuinely very nice and very helpful.
Yeah, and I really like that everyone was there for a reason. Everyone was there to get the job done. So not a lot of people wasted your time or anything like that. It was very straightforward. It's exactly how people wanted it to go and stuff like that.
And they make it very clear that the whole purpose of UPTAs is for you to get booked and get jobs, but also for the companies to cast you. They want you to succeed because they need to fill their shows.
Yep.
So you go into it with that encouraging manner. But we did the welcome meeting. They showed us where to go. They showed us how to audition, and then just walked us through a few different procedural things for the rest of the day. There even was a surprise visit by Elvis Presley himself since we were in Memphis.
That's crazy.
It was very funny, but they gave away a little goodie bag to a very lucky auditioner that fortunately was not me because she had to do her Elvis impression on stage.
Oh, come on. That would have been...
She killed it.
That would have been great.
She was great. I didn't want to do it at all.
So I had a little bit of an opposite experience than you, because where you went the first group of your day, I went the very last, and I actually went the last over the entire conference, which, at first I was I don't really know exactly how I feel about that, or maybe I should feel down about that because I'm going last. Maybe I was picked last. Turns out, does not matter. honestly, does not matter if you go last, if you go first, whichever. Some companies are there some days, some aren't, but that's vice versa. Some companies saw me that the first people who went the first day didn't get to see, and you get that in your schedule report. You get everything. So thankfully, going very last, I was scared that like there would be like no callbacks, or a lot of people were just kind of like they had already filled their season from maybe some other ones, but thankfully that was not the case. You do still get callbacks, you still get good companies. I got a lot of great companies that I got to talk to, so no worries there if you're ever going to UPTAs and you are the exactly last number to go.
Yeah, it does seem like a lot of companies give their fair attention to everyone, no matter at what point they see them audition.
Yeah, and it's great. A lot of companies that are there are a lot of, regional theaters. And if anyone's ever worked at regional theaters, it's usually run by people who were performers themselves. So they have been there in that seat before.
Yes.
And you can definitely tell that. You can tell the companies that either have been performers before or who hasn't. And it's really nice getting to know more about them.
Yeah, it was overall a really good experience. But after I auditioned and after I went, I guess I skipped a little bit, but once you go back, they hold you in a green room, they line you up in order of your number,
yep.
And then one by one you go and audition on stage for all the companies. And then after your audition, you go back to the green room, you're able to get your stuff, you can hang out if you want to, but after that initial audition at Playhouse at the Square, they tell you that there's about 40 minutes from after your group goes. It's like groups of 25 most of the time.
Yeah.
Once your group of 25 finishes auditioning, they take every single company's list of callbacks, no matter who they decided to call back in that group. They write all those callbacks down, they collect all those physical callbacks, and then they ship a list over across town to the Sheraton Hotel in downtown Memphis. And that's where they post all the callbacks. And about 40 minutes after your group ends, you're able to go over to the Sheraton and look around and see if you got any of those callbacks. So from this point on, our experience was about the same, because once you go in to find your callbacks, everyone's got to do that part.
Yeah, and we went in, I went with her on your day of auditioning and vice versa. And basically just around this big, like, convention room, I'll call it, like meeting room, banquet hall, they have all the theater company names up on, like, pieces of paper around the room, and then underneath it, they'll have these little slips that have, like, auditioning name and auditioning number. And then you'll see little check marks by whether they want to see you for the dance call, which is also like a cattle call. You won't, like, have to dance by yourself or anything. Or they'll like want to actually call you back in person, or there's another check mark I believe that was like keeping on file or something
resume
like that.
capped.
Resume capped, yeah. And if you ever are wondering if you can get jobs from resume capped, you 100% can.
Yes.
So that's kind of how the callback thing was. So you can go through, they give you a nice little pamphlet that you can have like a lot of different papers in there, and then you can write down what callbacks you have, what room they're in, and then for you, once you go to that room and you sign up for a time, you also on that one piece of paper has a little place to put in the time so you don't forget. And all the callbacks happen on, most of the time they'll happen on the actual day that you audition. If you're there like the first day of the conference and you get so many callbacks you can't reach all of them that night, I do think there is a little bit of leniency maybe for those members if they want to come back the following day. But the following day will have a whole new slew of callbacks. So it's best to get all of your callbacks in on one day.
It all depends on the company and their schedule and if they're able to fit you in. But to touch back on those dance callbacks, they're probably different than any type of audition I've been to before, because everyone is sent links of the dance to learn beforehand. So everyone, it's encouraged to go ahead and learn the choreography. And both of us went in knowing it pretty much. But then not everyone does the dance callbacks. So the dance is just, it's not automatically part of your audition. You do your 90 seconds, and then if a company wants to see you dance, then you can go to the dance callbacks. But if you don't get that dance callback from any company, then you actually can't even go to the dance callbacks. So it definitely depends, but that doesn't mean you're out of consideration for anything. Some companies just don't need dancers.
Right. And a lot of people, some people go in and, they do monologues mainly, and they're mainly like straight theater plays. And if you're ever wondering if those people get gypped either, they do not. I saw multiple people who went in with mainly acting repertoire and they weren't at the dance call, but they were still there until like past 10:30 at night because they were still getting callbacks. There's a lot of different theaters. There's a broad span of like styles and everything too. There's like Renaissance theaters, there's Shakespearean theaters, there's all sorts of
Children's
theaters,
cruise
children's theaters,
lines.
yeah, cruise lines, and there's like, Alaskan theater. I have multiple friends that work in Alaska. They loved it.
There's even like reenactment dramas. I saw a couple of their.
Yeah, they have
ones there.
everything possible.
Literally
so
everything that needs performers is represented at UPTAs.
yes, absolutely. So that's what's really great, and everyone's very supportive. Every single person I went back and talked to, it was more like they just wanted to prove themselves to the actor than even vice versa. And that is a very odd thing to feel in this industry. But it was really great. They were very supportive, and I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, and we keep saying it, but really it was such a supportive environment. And once we went around and got the callbacks, we did this on both days. On my day, Jared helped me by going around and helping me write down the callbacks and find out where all they were. And then on the next day, I was able to be his helper and help him find all those callbacks.
Yes.
But once we checked the callback list, we were able to walk around. The Sheraton is connected to a convention center. And so we walked over to the convention center where most of the callbacks were being held. And you find the company, whichever ballroom or conference room they're kind of set up in, and you can sign up for a time to come back later that night. So for me, I was fortunate again to go early. That can be a good thing and a bad thing, because I did have to get up very early. Your voice might not be quite as warm. You don't have as much time throughout the day to really get your singing voice or even your acting voice just really warmed up. But by going early, I was able to, by like noon, had all my callbacks signed up for, and I was done until the dance call at like 5 o'clock that night. So I had a good little chunk of time in the middle of the day to get something to eat and chill a little bit and get ready for that next round. But not everyone has that opportunity.
No, definitely not. I had about an hour, I want to say, I didn't even have time to go over and see callbacks before I just went ahead and changed. Like I just instantly changed and then ran over to that Sheraton hotel and started trying to sign up for callbacks. And thankfully I did have, you as a personal assistant, because so they have this thing that's just called like pink slips. And it's where if you couldn't make it to a callback, you could still like leave the company a little bit of a note and say stuff general like, hey, I'm so sorry I didn't like get your callback. I would love to still stay in touch, such like that. And if you ever go to UPTAs and you do have that issue where you just cannot schedule as many as you want in that small amount of time, I would definitely suggest you leave pink slips every single place that you were called back for that you did not, like you weren't able to go to, because we all know how it feels about like cold calling emails, then never hearing anything back. You do not want to do that with companies, no matter who it is, no matter what. Even if you don't particularly want to work for that company, still leave them a pink slip, still keep in connection, because we're all performers. We really are all in this together. So it is really nice to keep a healthy communication with all performers of every kind.
And you might think you'll be able to squeeze in all the callbacks within the hours that they're hosting them. But like, for example, in your case, you had two companies and their only available slot was 9 o'clock, and you can't be two places at once.
Nope.
So unfortunately, one of them had to be pink slipped for you to get back to later on.
Yeah, and that's really just personal preference of who you have to pink slip in that moment. But thankfully, there was some times that I just had to send you with running to find some places.
I got my steps in that day.
Yes, so that was very nice. And I will say, like, if you do have any friends there that are available to do that, I would suggest doing that. It is still doable by yourself, but in the moment, just because I didn't have that turnaround, like I didn't have the time to really look through all the times that each theater had, I just kind of walked by and saw a time and kind of just put it down, and I was like, I'll just figure it out later. Yeah. But you did help me out a lot with that, so thank you.
And all the companies, so even though I had all this time after my initial audition, originally I thought, well, hopefully maybe someone's hosting callbacks and I can just get a callback out of the way then, before the dance call. But what we found is typically most companies don't even start their callbacks until after. There were a couple I saw that did, but overall I would say go ahead and bank on doing most of your callbacks after the dance call. So even if you're not invited to the dance call, you'll still probably have to wait until after that dance call to do your callback, because a lot of the companies are in there watching the dancers, and they do 3 separate rounds of the dance call. You can choose which ones you go to. I think you can only go to 2 at the most. You can't go to all 3, but they have movers for people like me who are not a legit ballerina or dancer, and then they have a jazz call and or jazz/ballet, and then they also have a tap call.
Yeah, I will say that the mover call, though, the mover call was basically what most regional / I mean, if anyone's done community theater, is definitely more like that. Like, I would say the mover call was pretty challenging.
It was pretty fast.
Yeah, it's pretty fast. So you definitely need to learn ahead of time. It's not going to be something like 2 8 counts or like even 4 8 counts that I've seen. I would say that it was pretty difficult. I would say it was more difficult than even some places I've been before. Like I would say that the callback for like sight and sound and such like that individually was not as hard as this quote unquote move recall. So yeah.
And it was definitely, I was thankful I learned it beforehand because they don't really teach it there. They just review it like twice and then you go. And so I was definitely glad we had those videos to learn beforehand.
Yeah, I really liked in the dance recall specifically, they had like everyone sit kind of in the audience area and they had like a bunch of like the helpers there that were very, very helpful. Like line up and show exactly how you would line up, how you would switch, staggered lines, and then where you would exit from. And they were so calm, clear, and communicative that it was incredible. I didn't worry about anything. Everything was done for me. It was amazing.
Yeah. UPTAs has been going on for, I think this was the 31st year, and you can tell. I mean, they have this thing down to a science.
Yeah, for real. And all the theaters that we met with and everything, like I was saying earlier, that I was like one of the last people to go. I actually was the last person to go. One of the theaters I met with, which was one of my like targeted theaters, the first thing that he said, he was like, back in like, I want to say he said 95, he was like, I was the last person to go too, and I was like terrified. And I was like, yeah, me too. It's something interesting, you never know what they're gonna say. But one of the helpers backstage was like, all right, so you were the last one to go. What are you gonna do with that? And I was like, do you feel like the vibes are good to do something with that?
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, what do you mean by that? Nice little plug. But I was like, I thought about doing something, and she was like, own it. It's your moment. And whenever I finished, I just straight up was like, and that's all, folks. And like the great thing, and the pianist played like a dun 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 dun, and it was great. Like everyone was laughing. I was like, I know, yeah. It was so great. It really was.
Also, props to that pianist. He played for like 1,000 people that weekend.
Yeah,
and he did it very, very well.
Yes, he did. He had played for me once before. He played Donnie Nowitzki for me back whenever I did SETC in 2022. And SETC was being held in Memphis. So both times he's played for me have been in Memphis.
Speaking of SETC, like what were kind of like the differences you found in UPTAs and SETC? So
the differences were, okay, SETC is majorly more of a convention, which it is called a convention or a conference. It definitely is more of a convention. Like you're going to pay a lot more money. And what I would suggest is if you're going to try to get hired by companies, I would suggest UPTAs more, because if that's what your target is, you're going to get a lot more communication from UPTAs. If you're more in like the tech field and you're more trying to like take workshops because you find that interesting, that's whenever I would suggest SETC, because they're going to have those convention prices. You're going to be paying like $300+ to go, and you can go to workshops, classes like that. And then they have a big job fair specifically for techs. So I think, and they do have booths with like merchandise, which I thought was really cool. But if you're just going there to audition for like the professional auditions, it is way more like, I know the UPTAS is cattle call technically, but this is way more cattle call. Like you're going to be in a room with 100+ reps. I think you have 90 seconds, but it felt shorter back then, and you kind of stand up on like a little wooden stage with a little backdrop, and you have like groups of like 30 or maybe 40, and they're just kind of sitting on the side of where you walk up on this little wooden stage, and you just play your piece as fast as possible, and then you just walk off the other side of the stage.
That's so stressful.
I know,
and so
but
nerve-wracking.
The good thing about SCTC was you got your callbacks instantly, like within 5 to 10 minutes. You would walk out of a door straight into the callback room. But I saw like even like the best performers, like if you did really well at SCTC, you would still get like 5 callbacks a lot of times. At least the year I went. I know that it was still a little post-COVID-y whenever I went, but I saw a lot of people, I made a lot of friends there, and I we kept up on like social media, and I saw a lot of people kind of had a similar experience of a lot of people were called back, and most of the callbacks we went to, like I want to say the most I ever heard someone get called back that year was maybe like 10 callbacks, and over half of them were more internships and more worker related, where you are in the show, but then for another show you like work the box office, or another show you'll be a house manager. And that's great to learn like the different trades of it, but it's just nice to know before spending all the money. If you're going to just get like a summer stock job, I personally would definitely lean more towards UPTAs. It has way less of a fee, way less commitment. You're there for one day, and you will get a lot of communication.
And UPTAs is designed for year-round professional work. So it sounds like, I've never been to SCTC, but it sounds like that's really good for like college students, high school students, someone who can do stuff during the summers and stuff. But then that's part of why you have to be a college senior to even go to UPTAs, because they're looking for people who can work year-round.
Yes, that's right. And UPTAs did change a little bit. You do register every year now to try to get through. How that exactly works is they send your stuff out to 3 random reps of these, UPTA organization, like theaters, like UPTA partnership is what I mean. And they will like judge you on a certain scale, and then they'll see if your number's ranked high enough to make it within the slotted amount. This year they had 960 auditionees. Yeah. So, and
with those numbers, like, it's so easy to read into where you fall on that list of people who get put in, or there's even a wait list where if people drop out who have received numbers, you can get moved off that wait list. But it's so easy to read into where you fall. But with how the system is and how the scoring is done, it's so random. Like, out of all the reps there that are watching the videos, only a couple see your video. Right. So it's kind of just luck of the draw of who watches your video and what they're really looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, we've done a couple of things like that before, like with Nats and things like that. It really is, personal bias, but thankfully it has worked out. And I think that people who are on wait lists don't think too much of it. Don't think you are like too bad or whatever. It just means that there's a lot of competition, and that is great. Honestly, there's a lot of competition in different realms. Most of the people I saw on UPTAs actually don't fit into the exact same categories as you would think. Like, there wasn't like a ton of people who looked the exact same. It was very multicultural, everything. So
yeah, it was great. It was pretty different. And out of just the people we saw, I will say I got the vibes it wasn't as networking as I assumed it to be, and that might have just been my personal experience, because you could network with the companies because they might be at their booths a little bit, but most of the time they were in doing auditions, either auditions, callbacks, something. So it was hard to network a ton with the companies if you weren't necessarily having an appointment with them. And then as far as other auditionees, everyone's just so busy, and like if they're talking to each other, it might be people they know, but really you don't have much time to network and socialize other than in some of those really short waiting periods. Yeah, and I think that one thing that we want to talk about is the prep work for the callbacks. So some theaters ask for specific things to do callbacks, and a lot of times they won't even ask you to do those specific things. For instance, I had one callback that said that they wanted a classical musical monologue, they wanted a classical musical piece, and then they wanted a 50s to 60s musical theater. Now, I do have some of those ready. I don't think that right off the top of my head I was like, a classical musical monologue, I'm not sure. Like, I have a couple monologues in my book, but I hadn't thought of that one somehow. And I walked in there, and thankfully it was so chill. You would have thought we were just on a bunch of couches talking to each other, but we weren't. We were on chairs, but it just felt so like relaxed. And they asked me if I had a gospel song or a country gospel song. And I was like, well, I have some country songs. I'm a big gospel music, like I like gospel music, some of it, but I was thinking, for an audition cut, like right now, what do I have? So I made a little notes pad like app on my phone, and I put a ton of links to a ton of like karaoke tracks, and the one I ended up singing was Stick Season by No Can, and they loved it. They absolutely loved it, and they knew what we were working with as well. They knew we wouldn't be able to like pull just any song that they wanted to write out of a hat. But that was one thing to take note, is just get some stuff prepped up in your book. And definitely get tracks as well, because you're responsible for your background music once you're in callbacks. Yeah, there's not an accompanist at every single one. And that's something I was really stressed about going into auditions, because I knew for the initial audition that I'd have to have my 90-second package that I had prepared, a song and a monologue. But with callbacks, you just never know. And they do send out a list that's very helpful of things the companies might ask for at callbacks, but that changes. Like, one of my callbacks, they said that I had to do, I think it was a contrasting song and a contrasting monologue, and then in one of my callbacks it asked for 2 or something.
Yeah.
And so I went in fully prepared, and at least one of those callbacks, they didn't ask me to do any of it. I mean,
right.
I just sat and talked. It was literally just an interview. They wanted to get to know me a little bit more, and then they wanted to tell me about their company and some of the pros and cons of working there. And kind of like yours, it was so relaxed, so chill. The representative was so just real with me about what I was going into, and it was really helpful. But I was definitely relieved that I didn't have to do anything. I had some stuff on hand, and I would say going into UPTAs, even with not knowing what they could possibly ask of you, just to be safe, go in with 1 or 2 extra monologues that you can just do at any given moment, 2 contrasting pieces, a comedic and a dramatic. And then it'd probably be safe to go in with some sort of pop song, some sort of country song, and some sort of like classic musical theater song.
Yeah, definitely something that you're comfortable with as well. Don't try to learn something new like instantly, like the day before, because you just want to be comfortable. You want to get rid of as many nerves as possible, because nerves is what kills a good performance a lot, like bad nerves, at least for me. So yeah, it was a lot of fun though. Honestly, I looked forward to each callback after some of the ones I did. There was one that I did get called back on that they wanted me to learn a piece before coming back in,
and you had like no time.
Yeah, I had no time. Being the last person and like changing, instantly going to dance call, I was like, oh, this is going to be a train wreck. But I like went outside and cleared my head and played this musical piece. They gave me the sheet music as well. But I just played this musical piece for this track, and I was like, please let me be able to do this. But I went in and they were super supportive as well. They knew exactly what we were, going through, and how they did it is they just like got, if there's like multiple guys in the callback for me, or if there's multiple girls, they would get them to sing kind of like whatever song they had prepared, and then they would kind of sing it with you. They would kind of just play the backing track and like count you in and make sure, and then they'll be like, okay, cool, now do it individually. And then once you do it individually, they're like, cool, we're gonna move on to reading some scenes or reading like this monologue. And they were super supportive. It was a place called Ohio Star Theater, so that they were super supportive as well.
Nice.
Yeah,
they sound like a really good place.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I noticed about UPTAs going into it, I fully expected kind of everyone to be wearing different versions of the same thing.
Yeah.
And that was just not it at all. Like everyone was wearing something different. We saw some of the jewel-toned dresses that we've talked about before, the character shoes. We saw a few jumpsuits. We saw some suits. We saw some button-downs and jeans, like literally everything. But I will say the standard I saw basically everyone having is they looked professional. They were interview ready. They looked like the best versions of themselves.
Yes, and that is definitely the way to go. I don't think that anyone was in like the super good old fashioned, like for guys, like was not in like the full suit.
No.
They definitely, even if someone was wearing a suit, they made it their own, and I really like that. And it just brings more character, and it makes you stand out as well. No one was wearing like neon purple, but wearing your own style is great.
Yeah, I saw a little bit of everything. I wore a jumpsuit, and I was very comfortable all day.
Yes.
I loved it.
Must have been nice. Well, with all the UPTAs auditions and all the craziness behind us, we did tease a couple of announcements we were going to make this week on last week's episode. So, Genna, what is the first announcement you want to make?
So I'm very, very excited that right before UPTAs, I received a phone call that I've been cast in a feature film, and I'm very excited to be a part of it.
That is awesome. What is it about?
So it's called Sanctus House. It's a faith-based horror film about 4 college students who stumble upon the Sanctus House and go on quite the journey to figure out what the house is and what has gone on there. But I'm one of the 4 college students. My character's name is Jude, and she's the techie of the group. So a little bit outside of my normal type, but I'm very excited to get to know her a little bit and just explore that character.
That's awesome. When do you start filming that?
We'll start filming in March.
Nice. And where can everyone watch it once it releases?
Yeah, so I believe the goal is for it to release sometime this summer. I think that's still being finalized, but should be sometime this summer, and it will be on DVD as well as a few different streaming platforms. So another little surprise announcement that we have is
we are both accepting new students for virtual coachings. So we coach singing, acting, any sort of monologues, even scene work, and we also will coach like audition prep, audition techniques and college prep for auditions and such like that.
Yeah, we both have our bachelor's degree in musical theater and extensive singing and acting training, so we're very excited to get to share some of that with other people.
Absolutely. And if you do want to read up more on that, feel free to email us or even go to our Instagram page. It's at Jared and Genna, and you can email us at jaredandgenna@gmail.com.
Yeah, we really look forward to working with some of you guys.
Absolutely. We just want to connect and be that support system for you guys that we had in all of our teachers.
Yeah. And as always, like Jared said, you can find us at Jared and Genna on Instagram. Make sure you're following along with our stories, see when the latest episode's been posted, answer some of the questions I put out there for you guys. We really love hearing from you all.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you've made it this long, thank you guys so much for staying. We know this is a long episode, but we wanted to give you as much information as possible.
If you've listened to this point, head over to our Instagram and leave a little camera emoji on our latest post.
That would be awesome. Thank you guys so much. We'll see you.
Bye.